Right, hi everyone. You are watching the LitCon 2021 Epic Fantasy panel. I am Karina Kantas, award-winning author of Epic Fantasy. I'm also a podcaster, a radio host, and a YouTube show, and I also run Author Assist, which helps authors with marketing and promotion. And today my guest authors are Catherine Fitzsimmons, welcome. And
Thank
then
you.
we have Edward Ahern, welcome. And P.L. Stuart, Paul, welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
If you want to introduce yourself and let everyone know a little about your books, and then we can start. Catherine, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Catherine Fitzsimmons. I am the author of 5 books and the owner of Brain Lag, a publisher of sci-fi and fantasy books based just outside Toronto, Canada. We currently have 12 authors and 22 titles running the gamut of speculative fiction.
Awesome. Edward?
Yeah, I'm probably the senior member. I've got 6 books out there, 3 poetry, 3 fiction. The fiction is essentially fantasy. The poetry is essentially general, or if you will, literary. I'm also a board member and editor at Bewildering Stories. So I edit a lot of, or review a lot of fiction and poetry, and I'm also a coordinating member of a poetry group here in Fairfield.
Wonderful.
And
Paul?
I write a lot.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
Hi there, I'm P.L. Stuart. I'm definitely the novice of the group. I am the rookie author here, although you can tell by the scruffy beard, gray beard, I'm not young anymore. I've just recently published my debut novel, which is Drowned Kingdom.
Congratulations.
And, thank you, in February 2nd, actually. And I write epic fantasy.
I think we're frozen.
It's that disturbance in the force again.
Yeah. See, that's our opportunity to ad lib.
Fantastic. I remember when I was a debut novelist, it's such an amazing feeling when you get that book in your hand. Lift it up, show me in your hand, show me there it is. Congratulations, that's awesome.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, let's go. We are all authors of epic fantasy. So what is it that you love about this genre? Let's start with Paul. What is it you love about epic fantasy?
Well, I love the pure escapism. My day job is somewhat intense. If it's not really a day job, my job, I should say. So what I love about fantasy is that I could lose myself for hours, and hopefully my readers will too, and just immerse themselves in the world I create. I have a fascination with world building. All of us do. Obviously, that's why we're here and why we're so passionate and eager to speak about that today. So that's what I love the most about fantasy. And to be honest with you, I have the utmost respect for historical fiction writers. That's another genre I really enjoy. It's a lot of exorbitant research, and in fantasy, you get to make a lot of stuff up without having to do all that research. So that's pretty cool. So less labor intensive.
Yeah, that's what I love about fantasy. That doesn't matter what you create, it's real because it's fantasy. Anything your imagination can just go to the limits, and you could go totally wacky and wild, but it's believable because it's fantasy. Edward, what about you, dear?
Yeah, my debut novel, really my own. Well, I've got an unpublished novel, but it's not fantasy. My debut novel was this. It was about a roue magician who destroys an evil witches' coven. Nothing anti-feminist there, but that's just what happens. And then what I've been involved with more recently is kind of as an offshoot. I don't know, you probably don't remember it, but Edgar Rice Burroughs once wrote The Adventures of Tarzan, which was a series of more or less unconnected episodes of Tarzan's activities. And I like the idea, I like the concept of being able to switch settings as you move along through the development of the main characters. So that's what I've done. I've got 3 roughly 5,000 word pieces that have been published in a few magazines each. And I'll run it up to probably 40 or 50,000 and then put it together, nail it, with some serious nailing, and
glue it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, glue it all together. Excellent. Catherine, what about you? What's it you love about this genre?
Magic.
Magic.
So, obviously the same as Stuart, I love the escapism. I love the ability to create my own worlds and kind of explore the effects of the things I create. One of my favorite parts of my current series, I'm working on an epic fantasy trilogy. I've got Enduring Chaos was the first book, and then the second book, The Unseen Force, came out last summer. And I have a lot of fun kind of bringing elements of the real world into it and melding it together, and just generally the metaphor of fantasy. Because as we all know, it's not about magic and wizards and dragons and whatever. It's about perseverance and, doing the right thing.
It certainly is, yeah. Especially in my book, she's very stubborn, and when she's told that she's got to marry an evil warlord's son to make an alliance between 2 lands, she's like, oh, hell no. Eventually, she understands what her place is, and she understands these are her people, and she has to help them. And it's like you said, it's overcoming and sacrifice and courage, and of course conflict. You gotta have conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to languages. We know Tolkien, he made his own language. That was awesome. I would have loved to make my own language, but no, that was too difficult. So I cheated. I went English, but Old English Shakespearean type for my Ticinians. So what about you, Catherine? Languages, any changes in your novel?
So in the world of my trilogy, I'm just going to pull up, we've got a map here.
Awesome.
So the basic rundown is that a large part of the continent, due to a war between the gods about 600 years ago, ended up being controlled by the gods of light, as they're called. That's wisdom, justice, love, life,
Death,
and strength.
all right, okay.
So those are the 5 gods of light, and they essentially have dominion over most of the continent. Currently 3 kingdoms. And as a result of that, they wanted to make everyone kind of conform to their beliefs. And the gods are very hands-off in this day and age. It's just a form of belief, but the results of that comes through. So in fact, everybody in most of the continent in these 3 kingdoms all speak the same language. This same language that the gods of light decided, this is what you're going to speak. That's what everybody speaks. But there are a lot of regional accents and variations. But then there's also sort of tribes or other types of people who were kind of pushed beyond the eastern mountain range, and they hold on to older cultures, and they have a whole plethora of different languages that they speak. One of the point of view characters in the second book is brought along as he's from the mountains, and he's brought along on this expedition partially as a translator because he speaks about 12 different languages. But for the most part, it's the one language that's kind of my way around it, I suppose. But it's been so commonplace and so ubiquitous throughout much of the world that most people don't even know that the language has a name anymore. And the people from the eastern regions, they just call it trade because it's a lot of people speak trade because it's, again, a pretty universal language. So even though they have their own languages that they speak, most of them at least understand rudimentary trade so they can communicate with other people.
How are you doing this in your book? Are you writing it in that trade language and then translating it, or is it in English?
So it's in English. I kind of narrate. So I'll say what the character, because it's the main dialogue from these other people speaking other languages is coming through the point of view of a character who speaks these other languages. I translate that on the page.
Right.
Or otherwise, if it's from a different character's point of view, then they just don't understand. They're just speaking strange sounds, from their perspective.
Yeah, I've got, Okay, trade. What about you, Paul?
Well, just quickly, the premise of my book, A Drowned Kingdom, is based on my version of the Atlantis myth. And one of the main kingdoms is called Atalantic, just a bit of a variation on the traditional spelling and word. And they are this huge colonial power. Catherine talked about, essentially in her world, a lot more subtle, forcing or imposing one's religion on others. Well, Atlantics is again a big colonial power. Think of the Roman Empire, the British Empire at its height. So, and they're very snobbish and elitist about their language. They speak what is called their language is based on a continental language on a nearby continent that they've mostly conquered, and it's called High Atrimlandish. The continent is called Atrimland. So the Atlanteans speak this dialect as their main dialect. However, they're very well educated. They've mastered a number of dialects. So sorry, I should just probably pull up a map to give you some reference here. So this is a map of the.
Oops.
That's right, he's froze. We'll get him back.
Now I'm intrigued. I want to see the map.
Yes, don't. I was going to do a map on my book, but I never got round to it in the end.
Yeah, I don't have one in my series, so it's.
I don't know if he knows he's frozen. Oh, he's gone. Okay. Well, we'll wait till he comes back. Edward, do you want to tell me about any languages in yours?
Sure. I have had a lifelong infatuation with magic, and so I have a large bookcase full of various tomes, everything from Aleister Crowley to the Book of the Dead, and I've even read a lot of them. And I use those as reference points. And so a lot of, although it's not language specifically, it's a terminology that I infiltrate into the books. A lot of terms which I explain initially, but which are fairly arcane otherwise, because they're involved in magical ceremonies. And the other thing is really just wordplay. I speak German and French and some Japanese, and so I will slide in sort of double entendre things that so my main character.
Sounds beautiful, that did. Say it again.
My main character is called Malam, which is French for bad or evil soul, which gives you an idea of the conflicts I'm going to put him through before I'm done.
Okay. Oh, here comes Paul.
As we all tend to torture our characters.
We do put them through hell, don't we? Paul, hi. You were going to
Sorry
show
about
us
that.
some maps. That's fine. Let's have a
No,
look
sorry,
at this beautiful map.
I'll make it quick. So this is the land that many of the Atlanteans eventually head to. They have two native languages, one in the north, one in the south. The one in the north is roughly more of a Viking type, Scandinavian type society. The north is much more of a traditional, I guess it would be inspired by Britain, medieval Britain, early medieval Britain, like, 6th century type English sort of language.
Yeah.
And in any case, there's many languages and many dialects, but like Catherine, all of the book is written in English. When one character doesn't understand the language of another, they either need a translator or they need to switch to another common dialect that they understand. There is one main common dialect on that one continent I said that the Atlanteans head to, so they typically use that in my book.
For the medieval, I mean, you could write that in English in your novel and do what I do with my Shakespearean, change the words so it sounds Old English or medieval. I mean, they spoke English. So have you used any like accent or does it look like it's medieval in your novel, or you just wrote it just normal plain English?
Well, no, I write in normal plain English because there's so many other lands that will be introduced in my series. There's an African-inspired, very prominent African-inspired continent, and they're actually really the forebearers of the entire universe. However, most people don't acknowledge that. That being said, because I plan to introduce so many different races and they're all going to have their own languages and dialects. For me, the easiest thing was to, in terms of how people speak, the Atlanteans, as I said, are very they're very haughty. They're very they believe that they're the elite, peerless society. So their inflections, they speak very posh, right?
Yes.
So, actually, one reviewer said that it the difference was the Atlanteans speak in this almost biblical fashion, and then the Elvish, who are a lot more closer to that medieval Britain, they're a lot more gruff and common with their verbiage. So it's just those little nuances. I think that's how I've written the languages. I mean, you read the book, it's all English. However, you understand when there's someone speaking who's from one culture or society or the other because of the way they speak.
That's awesome. Let's talk monsters, creatures, dragons, whatever you have, unicorns, goblins. I don't know what monsters or creatures have you got in yours, Edward? I know yours is more about magic, but do you have any magical creatures?
My most recent installment was called In the Belly of the Beast, and it involves probably the nastiest dragon you've ever encountered.
Yay, go dragons.
Fears, and it took poor Malame all kinds of problems and scars to finally kill it off by the end of the installment. I tend to think that the evil that we do is more to each other than it is from monsters. So I'm a little light on the monsters and a little more on the duplicity and nastiness of our fellow men.
Gotcha. Catherine?
So the nature of my world, I mentioned that there was this great war between the gods about 600 years ago at the time of the story, and the gods of light who prevailed condemn magic. So there used to be more magical beasts in the world back then, but at this point there's very little.
They're extinct.
And yes, because the followers of the gods of light obviously believe the same thing. So magic as a whole is banished, it's condemned. So there's little things that I tried to put in that are a little bit outside of the world we know, just to give that glimpse of magic into it, even though they're not, like magical creatures. As an example, the character from the mountains, they have these giant elephant-sized cattle that are domesticated, and they use them for all sorts of different purposes: the meat, the hides, the dung even.
What do you call them?
Murok.
Murok. Cool.
Yes, Murok cattle. And then there are sprites, which are usually just glowing orbs that will congregate around things of magic. So they make a few appearances because, of course, in the actual story, magic's not really dead, and it's coming back.
Yes. Paul, creatures, monsters, what have you got for me?
No creatures, monsters. Very spiritual. There is an element of magic in the continent that the Atlanteans eventually traveled to. They are heavily faith-based in terms of various gods and goddesses, and what they call element.
Go on again.
Oh dear. Let me just interject while he's coming back.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not anti-monster. I want you to know that. This book here is collected fairy and folk tales, which is just full of the critters. Mostly original, some retold from really old sources. And this is a collected fantasy stories, also full of nasties.
Cool.
So I have nothing against ugly monsters that eat people. Trust me.
And another thing that I meant to mention with my series is dragons. Dragons are about, but they are extremely rare.
Yeah.
Grand majority of people have not seen them. And in fact, the dragons are, they look down on the gods. So they are extremely powerful, ancient, and generally just don't even bother with those human things wandering around.
They're better than the gods. The dragons are better than the gods.
Yes.
Paul, do you want to carry on with what you were saying?
I apologize, my internet's been crappy over here.
No problem.
Yeah, so the there is an element of definitely mysticism and spirits. Now, whether those spirits are actually real and tangible, or they're in the minds and subconscious of or conscious of the characters, that's debatable. I'll hopefully, if you read the book, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Don't want to give too much away. However, definitely there is an element of mysticism, gods, the effect of potential for magic, because I did say they are mages that exist in the one continent, and they believe that they wield the power of the elements, things like wind, fire, water, things like that. And the biggest mystery is whether or not they actually have that power, and whether or not things that occur are caused directly by them utilizing that power. So,
gotcha. Let's talk about residents. Let's talk about accommodation. I mean, where do these people live? Where do your characters live? Are they underground? Are they up in the trees? Are they in castles? We'll start with you, Edward. Where are your characters living?
Not well. Part of the discipline of the magic that I have, Malam is a sorcerer's journeyman apprentice, if you will, so proficient but not quite entirely capable. And he and his magus live in essentially a yurt, in essentially a tent on a dirt floor, self-imposed discipline. So that the looks of it comes from when they visit the various palaces and castles. It's set in kind of a Dark Ages medieval backdrop.
Lovely.
In general. And so that lets me talk about tapestries and fine wines and all that sort of stuff. But they live a very, very Spartan. If you think a Buddhist monk, you're probably not far off.
Wow. What about you, Paul? Your characters?
well, again, the main character, the protagonist, Ahern, comes from this huge colonial power, castles, lords, ladies, these beautiful cities, and it's it's, although it's an island as well, they have far-flung holdings and clients in other countries that they control, that are called colonies. So they live very well. They're very wealthy and affluent, and they continue to gobble up all these other societies. In the other continent, they eventually go to. They are. Sorry, I just want to do a bit of a compare and contrast.
No,
so the Atlanteans, they live in stone, and they're very skilled with making stone castles, etc. What you think of traditional medieval, Europe, 11th, 12th, 13th century.
Mm-hmm.
However, on the other continent, they build their cities and their fortifications with wood, because they don't have the same skill with stone. And then there are some ruins caused by that African-inspired society that at one point inhabited that area, that they were skilled with stone too. The Atlanteans, of course, believe that they are the only ones that can manipulate stone to that degree to successfully build these sprawling cities. However, there was a society that predates and still exists them that has that skill. So, but
your elves, you said you mentioned elves, or am I hearing things? Where
No,
do they live?
No, sorry, that was probably my mic. No elves. There's
No elves.
no elves.
Okay, Catherine, what about your characters?
So, the world of the continent is called Eldera, and the world of Eldera is based mainly on about 13th century, Europe. So the characters live in brick or stone or wood houses, depending on their station. The star, who is on the front of the books, Damien, she is the daughter of a merchant. Her mother died giving birth to her, and her father raised her. He is a trader. He sells the town's output of fabric. He kind of helped build up the town's production and industry, and he goes around every year and sells it in different places. So she has a nice little townhouse in this town where she grew up in. And the other characters, it depends on their station. I have a tendency to like to write about characters who are lower in station. I don't like starring kings and princesses and stuff like that. I like writing about kind of more common people. So another of the point of view characters, he lives on the other side of that kingdom in a similar, a bit larger house that was inherited through his family. He's been living there his entire life. It's fairly nice, but it's just his family in the house, him, his wife, and his 3 daughters. I have one character who lives in the castle of that city, and his is kind of an interesting situation because this character is part of a very secretive sect of knights, which it turns out it's a society, but the rest of the world doesn't know where they come from. And it turns out that it's an entire society, and all the families and the retired knights and such are sequestered in this one hidden tower inside the castle. And he had never left that tower until he got his first real assignment as a knight, which happened about half a season before the first book. So a few different, and then of course the characters who live on the eastern side of the continent have very different homes as well. There's various different cultures over there. So there's the people who live in the mountains, who live in low, flat-roofed stone buildings to help keep them warm in the long winter. There's people in the far northern jungle who live in, great stone pyramids and such. There's a whole range of different cultures.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Every fantasy book, well, every fiction book has to have some conflict. With fantasy, we have a lot of conflict because we need them to keep turning the page, and we put our characters through not hell, but we do put them through a lot. What is your main conflict in your book? We start with Paul.
Wow. There's so many. There's so much layered. There's such a layered aspect to the conflict in my book. It's hard to even pinpoint what it is. I would say that perhaps the main conflict is the character, my main character, author, and the protagonist, at war with himself and his ideals, his religious beliefs, his belief in his own sense and his culture's sense of superiority, his internal struggles with self-confidence, with backgrounded by all his dysfunctional family relationships and very complicated family relationships, and the situations that he's thrust in that cause him a lot of angst and turmoil. I'd say that's probably the central conflict. Although there's so many, but that's
he's got to overcome basically what you do through him and his emotions throughout the book. He's got to overcome it, and he's got to become more confident and step up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he battles a lot. He's this dichotomy. He's brave and noble and a great fighter, and he's very skilled and intelligent and a great leader. But then he's vain and he's privileged and he's opinionated. He's misogynistic. He's racist. He religious intolerance. He has all these, conflicting things that cause him to struggle when he's thrust in situations where he has to lead, but then he's no longer the leader, and he has to make alliances and has to make decisions quickly, decide who to trust, all in the backdrop of believing that you think the right thing to do, you think you come from society that has the right path, that society is superior, that's a tough thing to do when you realize that you're no longer in that position of quite the position of privilege that you were, and that really kind of turns his world upside down, along with all the other things that happen to turn his world upside down. So that's what he's coping with. So I think that's the main conflict.
That gives him a good lesson to learn. What about you, Edward? What's your main conflict?
Well, in terms of each episode, he's given an assignment, if you will, or a mission that, as he improves in his goetic skills, is increasingly more difficult and complicated, both in a physical and in a magical sense. But in terms of an ongoing thread, Malam realizes intellectually that in order to become a more proficient sorcerer, he has to essentially relinquish his humanity. But he has a woman he's involved with and a daughter who is chattel to a sorceress. And he has this huge conflict. Where should he stop? Where is it too much to give up in order to achieve the proficiency which he's been trying for all of his adult life?
That's a big decision for him to make, isn't it? Yeah. Catherine?
So starting at the beginning, we have the main character, Damien Sayers, and she has grown up, as I said, her mother died giving birth to her in the middle of what came to be known as the Century Storm, which was this massive storm that spread across almost the entire continent. And her mother was giving birth to her in the middle of this storm when lightning struck her house. Damien was born, her mother didn't make it, and ever since then, Damien has had a curse of magic.
Why
And,
curse?
she can't control it.
Ah.
So it has especially been coming to the forefront in the past. At the beginning of the first book, it's been about half a year since that first really manifest. Like, she's been sort of experiencing it, even playing around with it a little bit prior to that point. But at the start of the first book, it's really starting to get out of control, and she has a bad incident right at the beginning, which sort of sets her off on this journey, and she's trying to control it, come to figure out, why does she have this gift, this curse of magic. She also has, let's see if we can see it. It's there she is. She has yellow eyes, also as a result of that birth, which is she's been hiding them by wearing a veil for most of her life. And so the conflict, her conflict is kind of based around that, but the fact is it's also tied into a lot of other things that kind of are drawing these other forces of power toward her. So without giving away too much, that's kind of the central conflict, and it builds and evolves from there.
My fantasy first book, Illusion of Reality, it's a duology, but the actual book is also a duology. It's Becky from our land and is taken to Ticinia, where she really comes from, and becomes Thaya, the prophesied savior of her people. And her conflict is within herself, because in the first book, there's a second will, and this second will, she doesn't know when it comes out, she doesn't know what happens, but it's evil, and she can't control it because she doesn't know about it. It's only the tutor of the arts that actually knows this second will exists. Second book, you can actually see the second part of who she is. And so she's Thaya still, but then she also had the second will come out. And her conflict is battling against herself, being able to stay to who she is and not allow this second will to take the power. But towards the end of the book, she has to, if she's going to save her kinsman, she has to allow this second will to take over. But she gets control of it at the end as well. So even though she's evil, she has one side of her that's evil, the other side of her that's good, at least she can control the evil towards the end of the book, which you should never give away at the end of the book, and I just did, but never mind that.
I'm still gonna buy it. After hearing you guys, I don't like you guys right now because I have to add all your books to my TBR now list, and it's already unwieldy. But just the way you talk about it, I'm so stoked. Like I have to read all your books now. So
you have to have passion. You have to have passion in your book. You have to have confidence in your book. And these characters have lived in your mind for so long. These places that you've created exist. You've mapped them out. They are real to you.
Yes.
And when a reader reads your book, we hope that they get that same passion, that they believe this place exists, that they believe these characters are real, just like we do. Who would you say is your favourite character in your book, and why? We'll start with Edward.
Yeah, it's the one that's the most fun to write. Maybe that's the way I'll define it. The nemesis for Malam's Magus is a woman sorceress called Hastet, and she is a piece of work, and I love writing her, and I love letting her get one up on the megas. And it's probably the more enjoyable sessions. And she, of course, is in control of Malam's love, of Malam's woman, if you will. And that adds a little flavor to it. So it's a kind of a quadrology, and the Charlong is the woman. Charlong and Malam can be seen to be becoming these two elder magicians, but both for good and for bad, mostly for bad. It's just a lot of fun to write, and she's the most fun, no question.
Awesome. Catherine, what about you?
So I'm going to cheat and name a few. My main character, Damien, is obviously a favorite. There's more than a little bit of me in her. So
there's always a bit of ourselves in our books. Always.
Exactly. There's a bit of me in all the characters. And I think in a way there's also a bit of all the characters in me after, writing them and,
living them.
Yes. That said, probably the two most fun characters to write, one doesn't have a huge active role in the story, the Goddess of Chaos, but she is fun. But for the main character, the point of view character, I would have to say Garrick, who is the one I mentioned, who comes from this secret society of knights. He is a really interesting character because he's very two sides of the same coin. So he's actually half nobility. So his mother was the sister of the Duke of the province where he comes from. And he has attended court for a number of years, and essentially he becomes a dandy of the court. And so he comes across very confident, very charming, but at the same time, the people from the society that he comes from, this group of knights, the Agaci, they see him as a half-breed, and they've always treated him as an outsider. So while he's very confident and very outgoing publicly, internally he has a lot of self-doubt and self-confidence issues that he's trying to compensate for. And something else I will mention is, since the second book, he meets a character who was actually created by my husband. So just a little quick background. So my husband and I built the world and kind of the central conflict of the story together. And he wrote a book, Ruins of Change, which is, I like to think of it as The Hobbit to my Lord of the Rings. So it's a bit of it's a bit of a prequel. It's kind of what happens in the past prior to my trilogy, but impacts it, and kind of they both impact each other. And one of the characters from Ruins of Change comes back in the second book of my trilogy, and Garrick and this character meet up, and they ended up being incredibly fun to write because they play off each other so well. And writing those two characters was my absolute favorite part of both the second book and so far the third book as well.
I think it's awesome that both of you are authors.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you collaborated in a way with your book. That is awesome. Paul, what about you with your favorite character?
Well, I mean, Author is ultimately, I think, my favorite. And again, he's the protagonist. My book's written in first person. He is extremely complex and layered. And I think he's the compelling reason why people will definitely, he's a love or hate him type of character, all or nothing. He's fun to write, but I'll also, if I can cheat a bit, like Catherine did, I'll take old Yedwall, and Lacey, which are two characters in my book. And old Yedwall is Authen's uncle, and he is essentially a mirror in some ways of Authen, and he's a foil in some ways to Authen, and he is highly opinionated. And of course, with his, he's a war hero, and with his added clout, he and Authen have a lot of interesting verbal battles and a lot of conflicts in terms of decision making that really affect the book. And he's fun to write because he's very sarcastic, he's very witty, and he's the master of the one-liners, and he knows how to get under Authen's skin and really rile him, and also challenge his self-confidence because he's Authen's elder. So he gets to, when Authen makes a decision, he always gets to put in his 2 cents and challenge it. So, but if I may,
I like those two.
Their dynamic is very, very interesting. Yeah. But I would say that maybe one of my ultimate favorite character to write, the most fun with, is a mage. Her name is Lacey, and Edward was mentioning about, the one fun thing about, I love reading books with female characters that just dominate. And I can say this, that as you read my series as progressive, it's really, you find out really it's the women that run the universe. I mean, that's the way it is in real life, but the women really control, if not covertly behind the scenes, they really control the universe that I write. The men think that they control it, which is kind of like real life.
Women are behind the men.
The women, but not even behind. In my, they're very much prominent front and center. And for someone like Authen, who is very misogynistic and sexist and is not used to, he's a lord, he's a knight. He thinks women are supposed to be ladies wearing skirts and not fighting and not carrying swords and certainly not ruling kingdoms. But Lacey is a mage and a princess, and so she's his first initial challenge to a lot of those long-held beliefs that a woman's place is, as a wife, mother, lady, running a household, etc. And that he kind of gets his comeuppance a lot when it comes to her. She is not only a royal like him, but she's also, certainly equal, if not better swordsman. We won't give that all away, and she's also wields magic potentially, even though he doesn't believe that. So she is, and she's quite sharp. She's very forward in what she wants in life. She feels that she's certainly not lesser to any man, and they have an extremely interesting relationship and how it affects the book and future books. So yeah. It's Lacey is one of, and she's actually based on my stepdaughter, my lovely stepdaughter. Really spunky, tough, no nonsense, can take on anybody. That's one of my favorite characters.
Did you tell your stepdaughter that you based Lacey on her?
Oh yes, and when I just gave her the other day, when we got our author copies of the book, and I signed the dedication. This isn't hers. I think I signed it on the book's dedicated to my mother, but then I think it's the other page just before the table of contents that I wrote dedications for anyone that I gave the book to. I did, and she knew that before, but I did mention that, how proud I was of her, how much I loved her, and the fact that when she reads Lacey, I hope that she sees a lot of herself in that character, because I designed it based on her. So.
It's been absolutely wonderful meeting you all and chatting and learning about these amazing books. We're going to have to close now, so I'll go through everybody. You can tell everybody where you can find your books, and also if you're on social media and where. Catherine, we'll start with you.
So again, I am Catherine Fitzsimmons. I am the author of various books, including the Sisters of Chaos trilogy. You can find info on it on sistersofchaos.com. I also have a personal blog, thejinx.wordpress.com, and my name is on Facebook, Catherine Fitzsimmons. I don't have an author page. Just look me up. And
Okay.
also, brain-lag.com is my publishing company. Where is it there?
Wonderful.
That looks backwards.
Fantastic.
Anyway, so thank you.
Thank you. Edward?
A couple of my books are on Amazon, including Witch's Bane, and I have to go talk to my poetic side. This is called Irregular, which is also available on Amazon. People actually buy them occasionally.
It's nice when that happens, isn't it?
I'm on Facebook at Ahern. I think it's 38 or 39, and I try and list everything that gets published, which is mostly poems and stories. I'm on Twitter at Bottom Stripper. That's not what it sounds like. I'm afraid things.
I won't ask.
And I have a ton of fun writing. It took me a long time to realize that this is what I should have been doing decades ago.
Oh, it's never too late. Never too late. What about you, Paul?
Oh yeah, sorry. So I'm P.L. Stuart, the author of A Drawn Kingdom, the first book in the Drawn Kingdom saga, which will be a 7-book series. You can get my book
Books.
at the start. Then there will be prequel trilogies, etc. About 7 books initially. You can buy it on Amazon. My indie publisher, Friesen Press, which I should definitely hype up because they're amazing. On BookBub, on Barnes and Nobles, Indigo, etc. I am extremely active on social media, especially in particular Twitter. My Twitter handle is at PL Stuart Writes, one word. That's same for Facebook. I'm a lot more active on Twitter. I'm very engaged there. You can usually find me there. Send me a direct message. They're open. I also have my own website. That's www.plstuart.com. You can learn everything about updates. I have a blog there, updates about upcoming books. Learn a bit about me. So yeah, you can. I'm very active on social media, especially Twitter. So if you want to get a hold of me, the best place is Twitter.
Awesome. You can get my books from Amazon. I'm going to say hello to my publisher, Asteri Press, for taking a chance on this duology. Love you very much. And I'm Karina Kantas. I don't use a pen name. I write in every single genre. I have 14 books, and I cover all fiction genres, not just fantasy. And if our guests want to leave their links to their books under the event when we get it posted, and so people can find you a lot easier. Thank you so much for coming on to the panel and talking about your books. It's wonderful meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So nice to meet all of you. You guys are fantastic. Can't wait to buy your books. I'm stoked. So
Likewise.
Okay.
And thank you for the lovely discussion, Karina.
yes, thank you, Karina. We really appreciate it.
You're very
Thank you for
welcome.
hosting.
Wonderful. Thank you.